Hello, everyone. Tonight we're going to step into a world where mail delivery was less about stamps and more about surviving wolves, blizzards, and very irritable Khans. That's right, you're not watching a war movie tonight. You're becoming a postal courier for the Mongol Empire, one of the most absurdly efficient and quietly terrifying delivery systems in all of history. Genghis Khan didn't just conquer half the known world. He wanted to send letters across it too. And you're the lucky soul chosen to carry those messages. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you really like what I'm doing here. And hey, let me know in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is right now. I love seeing who's tuning in from what corner of the world. Now, turn off the lights, let the gentle hum of the fan surround you, and let yourself drift quietly into tonight's story. It's early morning on the open steppe. The sky is stretched wide and silver. The wind presses cold and dry against your cheekbones, and your horse is looking at you like he knows something you don't, which he probably does. You're wearing felt boots, a sheepskin cloak, and a mix of excitement and dread. Your superior, who may or may not have bathed in the last month, has just handed you a scroll tied with leather twine and whispered, "Deliver this to the Yam station in Karkorin. Do not lose it, do not read it, do not die. Do." Simple instructions, except the last one seems a little optimistic. In your hand, alongside the scroll, is something even more sacred than the message. A small, flat piece of metal engraved with Mongolian script and symbols of the great Khan. This is your paiza, your arrow pass, your passport, your only protection. It tells the world, or at least the Mongol world, that you are a servant of the empire. It tells station chiefs to give you fresh horses, warm food, and perhaps a place to sleep. More importantly, it tells bored soldiers not to put arrows in your back. There's no real training. You were given a horse, a direction, and a grunt, and now you're riding. Your thighs are already sore. The wind is relentless. You suspect your scarf was woven by a sadist. But hey, you're part of something enormous. Genghis Khan's dream of communication, unity, and extremely aggressive paperwork. The Mongol postal system, called the Yam, was a marvel of medieval logistics. It stretched over 6,000 miles from China to Eastern Europe. There were relay stations every 25 to 40 kilometers, places where riders like you could swap horses, rest briefly, and head out again. Some stations had yurts with warm soup and dry straw. Others had rats. Many had both. Riders were expected to cover up to 200 miles per day using the horse swap relay method. That's faster than most modern email servers when Mercury is in retrograde. The idea was to keep information moving, whether it was news of war, a marriage proposal, or a reminder that someone owed the Khan 2 yaks and a son-in-law. As you ride, your thoughts wander. Not far ahead is a small rise in the steppe, beyond which lies your first relay station. You hope they have food, preferably not moving. Your horse is huffing now, ears pinned, hooves cutting into frozen ground. Then figures on the hill, riders or bandits? You touch the paiza hanging from your belt. It's cold and reassuring. They see it, and just like that, they nod and pass. Welcome to Mongol Express, the only delivery system where survival depends on how shiny your badge is. You reach the first Yam station just after sundown. It's a huddle of yurts surrounded by windbreaks made of stacked wood and horse dung. A tired-looking man steps out, takes your horse without a word, and hands you another. It's covered in sweat and looks deeply offended to see you. You climb on anyway. Inside the yurt, another man offers you a bowl of fermented mare's milk, kumis. You accept because refusal might be rude. It's sour, fizzy, and tastes like a yogurt that's been holding a grudge. As you slurp, you overhear two riders arguing about a scroll one of them lost in a river. Apparently it contained a grain report, or maybe troop movements. Hard to say. One guy swears a goat found it, dried it, and ate part of it. The other just nods. These things happen. You saddle up again, scroll still tucked inside your cloak, and ride into the darkness. The moon is a sliver. Your horse is stubborn. You begin to think Mongol couriers were less selected and more survived by accident. And still, somehow, the system worked. Letters got delivered. Messages crossed thousands of miles. The yam became a backbone of empire. Some called it magic. Others called it madness. Historians still debate whether the postal system functioned as smoothly as the old chronicles claimed. Some say it was a brilliant machine. Others argue it was chaotic, inconsistent, and propped up by fear and myth. The truth, as usual, is probably somewhere in the middle, riding a half-starved horse and hoping the soup isn't moving. But you don't have time to worry about that. Your second horse is faster, leaner, and far more suspicious of you. You hold the reins tighter. The scroll is digging into your ribs. You've got 200 miles to go, and the next station might have meat dumplings. Maybe. If you're lucky, the second leg of your journey begins with silence, the kind that only exists in vast open spaces. The wind howls occasionally, and the ground beneath your horse's hooves crunches with frost. Somewhere out here, between the blue mountains on the horizon and the nameless plains behind you, there are more stations, more horses, and more bowls of lukewarm dairy products in your immediate future. You pull your cloak tighter and adjust the scroll tucked under your belt. It's still there, slightly damp with condensation and smelling faintly of goat hair. Not ideal, but still readable. Probably. You're starting to realize something peculiar about this job. It's not about speed or even courage. It's about endurance. A very specific kind of dull, aching, repetitive endurance. You're not a hero. You're a glorified letter carrier who occasionally eats cheese with fur still on it. You reach the next yam station just as the sun blinks over the horizon. This one looks a bit better. 2 yurts, a corral, and a post nailed to the ground with colorful streamers fluttering in the wind. These mean the local commander is in a good mood, or had too much kumis the night before, it's hard to say. A woman greets you. She's tall, silent, and holding a ladle like a weapon. She gestures to a tired gray mare. No words, just a look that says, "Don't spill kumis on the scrolls again." You nod respectfully or apologetically, or both. Your new horse is older, slower, and keeps trying to nibble your boot. You sigh and accept your fate. Not every day is a war horse kind of day. As you begin riding again, the plains grow flatter. The landscape shifts from frosted tundra to muddy stretches where the hooves of previous couriers have churned deep ruts into the soil. You wonder how many letters have passed this way. Hundreds, thousands, and then you spot something ahead. A wooden platform surrounded by stones. A relic of an older road system, maybe even from before the Mongols. It's a reminder that Genghis Khan didn't invent roads, but he definitely put them to work. Brutally. The YAM network was based on the simple idea that messages mattered, not just for wars or royal edicts, but for taxes, treaties, grain counts, marriage proposals, weather reports, and casual threats. It was all communication, and the more the empire expanded, the more it needed. Genghis himself was a communication obsessive. He sent scouts ahead before every invasion, demanded daily reports, and punished delays with, well, let's just say no one was late twice. The yam wasn't just useful, it was sacred. like the artery of an empire that couldn't afford blood clots. Your destination for the day is a relay station known among riders as the Bowl, not because of its hospitality, but because it sits in a low valley surrounded by hills. Sound echoes strangely there, and horses tend to spook easily. A courier once swore he heard drums in the hills. Another said it was thunder. A third just muttered wolves and refused to elaborate. You arrive just before noon, greeted by a boy no older than 10. He grabs your reins without hesitation, hands you a wooden bowl of fermented millet, and points to a yurt. Inside, the heat is stifling. A man with a scar across his cheek is scraping wax off a parchment with a dull knife. He looks up. Your pass? You show the paiza. He nods. He doesn't ask your name. He doesn't care. Riders come and go. Only the scroll matters. Over your meal, you listen to station gossip. Another courier lost his scroll to a fox. A noblewoman bribed a rider to delay a letter. A message intended for the Khan was dropped in a fire pit by accident. The ashes smelled like cinnamon. No one knows why. You leave an hour later on a fresh horse that's surprisingly well fed and equally uninterested in your survival. The scroll remains tucked close to your ribs, its leather cord wrapped twice for safety. You've stopped worrying about wolves. Now you worry about the wind. It bites like broken glass. Your fingers are starting to go numb when you remember a story, passed between couriers like a sacred truth. Once a rider fell into a frozen river, his horse kicked its way out, the scroll frozen to his chest. When thawed, it was still readable. The Khan laughed for 10 minutes, then gave the rider a gold belt. The rider retired that day, probably to a yurt somewhere warm, far from rivers and mail. Historians still debate whether stories like that are real. Some insist they're myths, meant to motivate riders through long, hopeless journeys. Others argue that truth doesn't matter. Belief kept the letters moving. You stop at a lone tree, not common in these parts. It's gnarled, bent sideways by years of wind. Hanging from a branch is a strip of red cloth, tied by a courier in memory of a friend who never returned. It flutters as you pass. By nightfall, you reach the third station of your day. It's little more than a fire pit and a bored-looking woman sharpening a knife. She nods at you. Mail? You nod back, mail. She gestures to a pile of saddle blankets. Sleep. You collapse into the furs, scroll still bound to your chest, and drift into a dream of drums in the hills and kumis that doesn't fizz. Outside, the stars blink over the empty plains. Your horse sleeps standing. You've still got 5 more days to go, and you already smell like soup. Morning finds you buried in blankets that smell faintly of burnt wool and goat. You sit up slowly, blink at the smoky air, and realize the station chief is already boiling something that might be tea, or broth, or soap. Mongol liquids often had multiple personalities. You stretch, pop your shoulders, and check your scroll. Still there, still dry, still carrying the fate of someone you've never met. You think for a moment how strange it is that so many lives could hang on a scrap of parchment riding in your armpit. The station chief grunts something about a horse and points to the corral. You eat a piece of stale flatbread, mount a young chestnut mare who looks like she resents you on principle, and start the next leg of the journey. The sky is blue and endless, the wind is cold and judgmental. Somewhere between your 4th and 5th station of the route, you reach the edge of what the locals call the cold steppe. It's flatter than your expectations and just as cruel. The horizon is a smudge, and the land seems to stretch forever with nothing but dry grass and occasional piles of what you hope is horse manure. You pass another courier heading the opposite direction. You nod. He nods. Neither of you speaks. That would waste energy. Besides, it's too windy for words. About halfway through the day, you stop at a relay hut affectionately called the Elbow, because the path bends sharply around a patch of hills there. It's a lonely little outpost built from wood and whatever was unlucky enough to be lying nearby. Inside, a man is carving something into a bone. When he sees you, he sets it down and gestures to a blackened pot over the fire. "Soup?" he asks. You nod. It tastes like water, regret, and maybe onion. You're halfway through when he says something peculiar. "Scrolls don't always want to be delivered." You pause. "What?" "Some messages are cursed," he continues, stirring his pot with the bone he'd been carving. "Bad luck in the ink, treachery in the seal." You laugh, or try to, but he's serious. "There was one rider," he says, "years ago. Carried a scroll from Karakoram to the western desert. Never made it. They found his horse in a well and the scroll still tied to the saddle. Dry, unread, like it was waiting." You eat a little faster. Back outside, the wind kicks up dust devils, small twisters that spiral and dance along the trail. Your horse shies from one, and for a second, you nearly drop the scroll. You tighten the cord, double the knot, and mutter a silent apology to no one in particular. As you ride, your mind drifts. You think about the logistics of this whole operation, the sheer number of stations, horses, riders, and scrolls. Historians still debate how many posts actually existed across the empire. Some sources, especially the Chinese records, estimate up to 1,400. Others scoff and say maybe 300 on a good day. Then Marco Polo swaggered in and claimed 10,000. Plausible? Maybe. Verifiable? Absolutely not. Historians throw up their hands and shrug. But one thing's certain. It worked. Somehow, miraculously, absurdly, it worked. Letters moved from one end of the empire to the other, faster than most armies could march. And you, scruffy, freezing, possibly hallucinating from lack of real food, you're part of it. Mid-afternoon, you pass a large black stone with ancient script carved into it. Some old memorial. No one stops anymore, but riders are told to tip their head, so you do, just in case. Then something truly strange happens. You see a figure standing alone beside the road. They're wearing a thick red cloak and holding something wrapped in linen. As you approach, you slow your horse. It's a woman, middle-aged, calm, her expression unreadable. "You're going west," she says. You nod, uncertain. She holds out a small parcel, no seal, no markings. "Can you take this to Station 42? You hesitate. Unauthorized packages are frowned upon. Still, something about her gaze roots you in the saddle. You take it. She says, "Tell him, it's forgiven," and turns away. When you arrive at Station 42 3 days later, the parcel is gone. Just vanished from your pack. No one believes you ever had it. You begin to wonder if you imagined the entire thing. Riders talk, the road plays tricks, the wind whispers things it shouldn't know. And the strangest part? There is no Station 42. You ride on. The scroll under your cloak suddenly feels heavier. Or maybe it's your thoughts. Another night, another station. This one's called the Bitter Post, because it's always cold, and the soup is mostly salt. The keeper greets you with a nod and a bucket of water. You pour some over your head, gasp from the shock, and call it a bath. That night, you dream of letters flapping like birds across the sky, their seals glowing like fireflies. The morning at the Bitter Post starts before the sun dares to rise. You're jolted awake by a goat sneezing into your face, an unorthodox but undeniably effective alarm system. The station keeper is already up, his face half lit by a small oil lamp as he sharpens something that might be a spoon or a dagger, or both. You groggily prepare for the next leg, and your horse greets you with the tail swat to the ribs. You're growing fond of the way every creature here treats you like a minor inconvenience. It's a special kind of affection, Mongol style. The wind outside is razor thin, not howling today, but whispering, like it's conspiring with the horizon. You check the scroll again, double knot the leather cord, and swing into the saddle. Your legs complain. Your backside files a formal protest. But the Empire doesn't wait. Today's ride takes you through flatter, dustier terrain. You cross wide valleys with low scrub, open fields where even a squirrel would struggle to hide. It's so barren that you start to hallucinate landmarks. A rock shaped like a turtle, a tree you could swear you saw yesterday, a puddle that looks like a sleeping fox. The scroll rubs against your ribs like it's reminding you, don't drop me again. By mid-morning, you reach a curious station known as the Three Posts. It's a bit of an oddity. 3 small huts clustered together in an almost ceremonial triangle. No one remembers why they built it this way, but it's been like that for generations. 1 hut for sleeping, 1 for cooking, and 1 strictly for scrolls. You enter the scroll hut, and there it is. Wall after wall of leather-tied messages, some yellowed, some crisp, all stacked and cataloged with surprising care. The keeper here is an elderly man with 1 eye and the posture of a potato sack. He asks no questions, but when you show your scroll, he whistles through his few remaining teeth. Big one, huh? You nod, suddenly nervous. Who's it for? He shrugs. Not me. You're fed barley porridge that's mostly just wet flour, and then handed a new horse, a shaggy gray with a suspicious limp that somehow outruns your last mount within minutes. You've stopped questioning Mongol horse logic. As you ride, you notice distant smoke curling from a small village to your right. Technically, couriers weren't supposed to veer off path, but something about that smoke makes your stomach tighten. You glance at the sky, still clear, and nudge your horse off the trail. What you find is eerie. A handful of yurts smoldering, pots overturned, and no people in sight. There's no sign of battle, just abandonment. A carved wooden plaque rests by the largest yurt. You brush dust from the inscription. It's a delivery mark. Someone here once ran a yam substation. Now it's silent. You leave quickly, scroll still safe, but your heart a little heavier. Empires rise and fall. Mail just keeps moving through the ashes. Back on the main route, you pass through what riders call the Wind Gate, a narrow valley where gusts squeeze through like angry spirits. You duck low, cloak whipping around your neck, eyes squinting against flying grit. It's here that you remember the story of the courier who lost both his boots to a whirlwind and kept riding barefoot for 6 days. The scroll he delivered was a wedding announcement. The groom had already married someone else. History doesn't record what happened to the barefoot rider, but the wedding cake apparently survived. Historians still debate whether stories like that were exaggerated to make the yam seem mythical. Some argue they were practical, meant to inspire fear, awe, and maybe punctuality. Others say the riders themselves spread tall tales just to stay awake. You reach the next station by nightfall, and this one's downright cozy. A small, well-maintained yurt with smoke curling from the chimney. The keeper is a woman in her 50s who offers you hot stew and tells you to sit before you fall over like the last idiot. She insists on inspecting your scroll for damage. You hand it over carefully. She squints, nods, and wraps it again tighter than before. Too many riders treat messages like sheep dung, she mutters. This one's for someone important. Don't mess it up. You want to ask who. You want to ask what it says, but you don't, because you're not paid to know. Later that night, you sit by the fire as she spins yarn from camel hair and tells stories of her father, also a courier, who once got caught between a Mongol patrol and a herd of panicked yaks. I asked what he did, she says. He said he delivered the letter anyway, then made yak stew. You laugh, finally. A real laugh. It feels like something old and warm coming back to life inside your chest. She notices. First time on the road? You nod. Third station, maybe fourth. She raises an eyebrow. Still laughing, that won't last. Outside, the wind softens to a whisper. The stars blink like quiet watchers. You unroll your blanket, place the scroll gently under your head, and close your eyes. The last thing you hear is her voice, barely above a breath. Don't drop it, don't read it, and whatever happens, don't be late. You wake before dawn to the smell of firewood and something frying. Possibly eggs, possibly fermented dough, possibly yak fat disguised as a breakfast delicacy. Either way, your stomach growls in surrender. The station keeper hands you a bowl and says nothing. Her expression suggests this is her way of wishing you good luck. You eat quickly. There's a thin slice of meat hidden in the stew, an unexpected luxury. She doesn't explain. You don't ask. Riders don't ask many questions after a few days on the yam. As you prepare to leave, she hands you a strip of leather, rough, sun-dried, looped like a charm. For the scroll, she says, and for you. You nod, a little more grateful than you expect. Today is not going to be easy. The terrain ahead is known as the Whispering Flats, a section of wind-raked steppe where the grass grows low and crooked, and strange sounds carry at odd angles. Some couriers say they've heard voices calling their names out here. Others say it's just the wind. A few say it's the ghosts of messengers who never made it. Your horse is strong today, dark brown with a white stripe, and the kind of attitude that suggests he's used to outrunning wolves. You trust him immediately. About an hour into the ride, you pass an old postmarker, splintered, half buried in dry mud and clearly ignored for years. But carved faintly into the surface is a name, Urgene Khatun. That stops you. Urgene was once regent of the Chagatai Khanate, a rare woman who ruled in a storm of scheming men. She was known for her patience, her ruthlessness, and oddly, her obsession with mail. Legends say she read every message that passed through her region, had duplicates copied, and once intercepted a love letter and responded in rhyme. Historians still debate whether Urgene really tampered with the yam system or simply watched it closely. Some call her a brilliant administrator, others call her a paranoid tyrant. You think maybe she was just lonely and clever. You ride on, the wind picking up. The scroll is tight against your chest, now wrapped in the extra leather cord from the old woman. It feels a little safer. You do not, however, feel any safer. Then on the edge of the horizon you spot it, a yurt on fire. You press your horse harder. As you approach, flames flicker low. The yurt is collapsed inward like a wilted flower, and the surrounding station is eerily quiet. There are no signs of struggle, no bodies, just scorched earth and a single clay jar sitting upright by the entrance. Inside the jar, a sealed scroll intact, unmarked. It hums with tension. You don't touch it, you're not authorized, but you stare at it for a long time, and then something moves behind you. You whirl around, but it's just a fox. Scruffy, small, probably annoyed you interrupted its scavenging. You breathe again. No one ever tells you how many scrolls don't make it, or how many do, only to vanish afterward. There are whispers that some messages were meant to disappear, that they carried betrayal, or secret alliances, or simply terrible news. And someone along the line decided they were better off buried burned or abandoned in the wind. This scroll in your cloak, you're beginning to wonder which category it belongs to. By midday, you reach a large relay station called the Turn, because it's where the westbound trail bends toward the trade cities of Central Asia. This station is different, bigger, busier, more organized. It has 3 couriers sleeping on furs, a clerk who tracks arrivals on a carved wooden tally board, and an actual pen for the horses. You're offered rice and salted radish, bland but edible, and directed to a long bench where other riders rest. One of them sits up and squints at your paiza. "High rank," he says, gesturing at the mark on your pass. "Special delivery?" You shrug. "I don't know what it says." The rider chuckles. "Good, that means you'll live." He rolls over and goes back to sleep. You linger at the station a little longer than normal. There's an odd atmosphere here. Not fear exactly, but the kind of tension you feel when something might go wrong and no one wants to be the one who causes it. You check your scroll again. Still sealed, still humming. Outside, a courier returns from the west with half a horse and a limp. He mutters something about sandstorms and bandits, then hands over a bag of crushed dates and collapses. It's time to leave. You mount a new horse, taller than the last, calm, focused. This one is used to couriers. You can feel it in the way it settles into a rhythm almost immediately. You let the reins loosen and trust it to follow the trail. You ride into late afternoon, passing a group of traders hauling silk and dried fish eastward. One of them offers you a mango, and you accept with stunned gratitude. It's half rotten, but still sweet. A reminder that the world is wide and occasionally generous. The sun begins to set. The scroll pulses faintly with heat warmed by your body, your breath, the absurd weight of moving words across empires. As the light fades, you hum softly, an old lullaby your grandmother sang when the wind howled like this. You don't remember the words, just the rhythm. Somewhere behind you, the flames of the burned yurt still glow faintly in the dark. And ahead, only more dust, more sky, and the quiet heartbeat of a message that still insists on being delivered. The stars rise like old friends, blinking down with that distant, unbothered patience only galaxies can afford. You've been riding for hours under their gaze, letting the sound of hooves against packed dirt and dry grass replace your thoughts. The night is gentle, almost kind, except for the scroll, which you now feel with every heartbeat. It's no longer just an object tucked against your ribs. It's something else, a whisper, a weight, a question you're not allowed to ask. You stop briefly by a creek, your horse lowering its head to drink in loud, grateful gulps. You splash water on your face and drink from cupped hands, the cold rushing through your throat like clean thunder. The moon paints silver across the landscape, and for a moment, you feel almost holy. Then you hear it, a snap, a crunch, a presence not your own. You freeze. A figure steps out from behind a rock, holding up a hand. No weapon, just calm. He's wearing the layered robes of a desert merchant, and his eyes glitter like polished obsidian. "You're a courier," he says, voice low and smooth. You nod cautiously. "I was one too," he adds, "long ago." You don't respond. This is how ghost stories begin. He tilts his head. "Still carrying them like they matter?" You blink. "They do matter." He smiles, not kindly. Maybe, or maybe they're just stories waiting to disappear. And then he vanishes, not in smoke or magic, but just walks away like he was never meant to stay long. You mount your horse and ride on, trying to convince yourself that was just a man. A tired man, with dramatic timing. The next station is small, half buried in a depression where wind gathers dust like secrets. A single yurt, no fire, no movement. You knock. Nothing. You call out. Still nothing. So cautiously you push the flap open. Inside, everything is perfectly in place. Tea bowl on a low table, sleeping mat folded, a pot of rice still warm by the fire. But no person. No sign of struggle. Just absence. You sleep there anyway because you're tired and cold, and the scroll is now radiating meaning whether you want it to or not. In the morning, you find a new horse already saddled and tied outside. A gift, a trap, a coincidence. You check the hooves for cracks, smooth, clean. This horse was cared for, recently. You ride it. That's what yam riders do. You press westward, into hills that rise and fall like the ribs of the earth. The sun bakes your back. Lizards dart across the road. A vulture circles once and decides you're not yet pathetic enough to investigate. As you crest a ridge, you spot something beautiful. The Tower of Tarakai, a massive stone structure built centuries earlier, now serving as a ceremonial halfway mark in the yam system. Riders are supposed to circle it once, counterclockwise, for luck. So you do. The base of the tower is carved with names, riders, dates, blessings, curses, poetry. You run your fingers across one inscription that reads, "He died 3 steps from here. The scroll lived." It's unclear whether that's meant as inspiration or warning. You sit in the shade for an hour, watching the land breathe. You eat dried apricots and stale bread. You think about the man by the creek, about the missing station keeper, about the woman who said, "Tell him it's forgiven." There's a pattern here, but it's tangled. And still you ride. By late afternoon, the trail leads you into a patch of woodland, rare in this part of the empire. The trees are thin, tall, and rustle like old paper. You ride slowly. The horse senses something and moves cautiously. Halfway through the woods, you pass an old marker stone covered in ivy. You dismount to inspect it. Beneath the green, in crisp, ancient Mongolian script, it reads, "If you are carrying the letter, do not look back." You stand there, scroll at your side, the trees still whispering in the wind. Then, because you're human and curious and possibly a little foolish, you look over your shoulder. Nothing's there, just your trail. Still, you feel watched the rest of the way through the woods. When you reach the far edge of the forest, the trees give way to sand. The outer deserts of the Western Territories begin here, stretching flat and wide, their dunes rippling like old maps. You stop at a small outpost carved into a hill. It's not a real yam station, more like a temporary rest point for caravans. But the keeper, a grizzled man with 2 silver earrings and a scarred lip, welcomes you like an old cousin. "Courier?" he asks. You nod. He offers camel milk and bread fried in oil. "Sit, you've crossed more than half the empire." You stare at the firelight, at the horse napping nearby, and for the first time you feel it. You are becoming one of them, one of the riders with stories but no name, one of the voices in the wind. You sleep deeply that night, the scroll beneath your saddle, wrapped tight in its cord and warmed by the body heat of someone who still doesn't know what it says, but knows somehow that it's changing them. You leave the hill outpost just before sunrise, the horizon painted in bruised lavender and dusty pink. The desert ahead stretches like a sleeping sea, rolling dunes, dry wind, and a silence so complete it swallows the beat of your own heart. The keeper hands you a satchel of water and says only, "Don't stop until the sun is behind you." You nod and ride. The transition from steppe to sand is subtle at first. The soil loses its bite, the grass fades, the horses grow more hesitant. Your mount, a speckled gray with a narrow chest and thick hooves, moves slower now, each stride more deliberate. It's not tired, it's thinking. Mongol horses do that when the terrain gets tricky. You tighten the water flask at your side, double check the scroll still tucked under your cloak, and lean into the saddle. The heat will rise quickly, and the wind will lie to you, carrying sounds from miles away and pretending they're right behind you. Today's destination is a desert relay station known to riders as the Throat. No one's sure why. It might be shaped like one, or it might be where voices go to disappear. Either way, it's the only sign of life for the next 30 miles. You ride through the morning with your mouth half covered and eyes squinting into the light. Occasionally a hawk circles overhead, then loses interest. You pass a row of bones, maybe camel, maybe something worse, bleached and half buried in sand. Someone has placed a carved wooden coin on one of the skulls. A memorial or a joke. Near midday, the heat settles on your back like a giant hand. The wind dies, the world feels paused. And then it happens. Your horse jerks to a stop. There, in the middle of nowhere, sits a lone man beside a covered cage. Yes, a cage. He looks up as you approach, face sunburned, eyes the color of dust. Courier? You nod. Yes. He gestures to the cage. It's for the Khan. You frown. What is? He pulls back the cloth. Inside, a single falcon. Feathers ruffled, eyes wild, a tiny scroll tied to its leg. You blink. I already carry one. He shrugs, then carry two. There's no name, no seal, just a whisper. Fly it if you fail. You secure the cage behind your saddle, unsettled now in a way you can't explain. The scroll under your cloak feels heavier. You haven't opened it. You won't. But it's starting to feel like it wants to be read. Historians still debate how messages were prioritized in the Yam. Some say scrolls with gold seals were diplomatic, red for war, black for death. Others say color coding was inconsistent and unreliable, especially once the stations began improvising. One legend tells of a station that ran out of black ink and substituted sheep's blood. The rider fainted when he saw it. You finally arrive at the Throat by late afternoon. It's not shaped like a throat. It's shaped like despair. A half-dug trench in a dune, covered by cloth and propped with sticks. A young boy greets you. He says nothing, just takes your horse's reins and gestures for you to follow. Inside the trench is surprisingly cool. You're offered flatbread and melon slices, somehow chilled. There's water, a lot of it, stored in ceramic jugs sealed with wax. Rain last week, the boy explains. You nod. And then a strange thing happens. He asks to see the scroll. No one ever asks. Your hand hesitates at your belt. Why? He shrugs. Because sometimes riders carry the wrong one. You pull it out. He doesn't touch it, only leans close and inhales deeply. Then nods. That's the right one, he says. You try to laugh. It comes out as a dry cough. Later, after resting for a while, you saddle a new horse, short, thick, and practically humming with nervous energy. The boy helps you attach the falcon's cage more securely. If you need it, he says, the latch is leather. Just pull. You nod. What happens if I release it? It goes where the message wants to be, he says simply. And just like that, you're off again. The desert begins to shift beneath your horse's hooves. Sand gives way to cracked earth. You pass a single dead tree, twisted like a dancer mid-spin. Riders call it the bent prophet. They say if you tie a scrap of cloth to it, your message will reach its destination faster. You tie a piece of your inner tunic and hope it's not just superstition. As dusk falls, the air cools. Your skin, hot all day, begins to sting. You haven't seen another rider in 2 days. That's not uncommon out here, but it doesn't feel right. and then just ahead you spot something glinting in the sand. You dismount, approach carefully, and uncover a helmet. Beside it, part of a saddlebag, a cracked water jug, a boot, all half buried. You dig a little. Scrolls, 5 of them preserved in leather, still sealed. No rider in sight. You look around, nothing, no vultures, no bones, just missing. You kneel, brush the sand from one scroll, and recognize the mark. It's meant for the same destination as yours. You rewrap them carefully, place them beside your own. Now you're carrying 6. One of them whistles faintly when you move it. You don't ask why. That night, under the stars, you set camp without a station, just you, your horse, and your half-dozen secrets bundled tight. You listen to the wind rustling the edge of the falcon's cloth, and for a moment you wonder what would happen if you just opened them all. But you don't, because out here words have weight, and scrolls do not like to be read by the wrong hands. Dawn finds you curled against your saddlebag, the scrolls forming a lumpy pillow beneath your head and the falcon shifting quietly in its cage. You're not sure what time it is. The desert doesn't offer clocks, just a rising sun and the whisper of sand against your boots as you pack up. You check the 6 scrolls. Yours is still warm from your body. The others? Cold and unfamiliar. One of them now smells faintly of lavender. You didn't notice that before. You ride without breakfast. There's no station nearby and no firewood to boil tea. Just cracked earth and broken sky. You chew on dried apricots, drinking sparingly from your water flask. You offer none to the horse. It doesn't need it yet. It knows the distance. The path leads through what the writers call the Valley of Echoes, a shallow, stone-lined corridor where sound plays strange tricks. Riders avoid shouting here, not because of superstition, but because they don't want to hear what calls back. As your horse's hooves strike the ground, you hear the echoes, clear, immediate, then faintly distorted as if the earth is whispering versions of your journey back to you. Courier, scroll, alone. You try to ignore it. You hum softly instead, an old traveling song out of tune and half remembered. The falcon shifts in its cage. For a moment you think it's humming too. Midway through the valley, you come upon a broken yam post, a single wooden frame still bearing a faded symbol of the Great Khan, scratched over by a child's drawing of what looks like a goat. Beneath it, an old tin bowl and a pile of rocks stacked neatly like a grave, but no name. You dismount and offer a few drops of water into the bowl. It's what riders do just in case. Back in the saddle, your pace quickens. You're close now, within 2 days, perhaps less, of your destination. You've memorized the seals on your collection of scrolls. Yours bears the mark of Karakorum, capital of the Mongol Empire in its golden years. The others are from the outer provinces, border towns, desert stations, a few from the coastal regions where messages traveled on boats for part of their journey. You wonder if they were all meant for the same person or the same purpose. You wonder if someone is waiting for you, or if these scrolls were never meant to be read. Historians still argue about this era of communication. Some say it was unparalleled in precision. Others insist it was a beautiful mess. Scrolls lost, duplicated, rewritten, and sometimes entirely fabricated. The yam, they argue, was less a system and more a gamble enforced by speed, discipline, and the looming threat of execution if you drop the wrong letter. And yet you're here. The scrolls are here. The desert, harsh and uncaring, hasn't swallowed you yet. By late afternoon, you reach a fork in the road. There's no sign. Just 2 trails, equally worn, equally bleak. You dismount and walk to a small pile of stones beside the fork. Buried beneath it, as tradition demands, is a bone whistle left by an earlier rider. You pick it up, blow once. The sound is sharp, low-pitched, and vanishes into the wind. Then nothing. Then a hawk cries overhead. You glance up, and then you notice it. A small rock, just off the left trail, painted with faded red ochre in the shape of an arrow. Left it is. You ride. As the sun dips low, the land changes again. The cracked flats turn into soft dunes. Ahead, a set of low stone ruins appears on the horizon. Crumbled walls, bent wooden frames, and one stubborn flag still fluttering atop a post. This is Mustak Station, once the jewel of the desert yam, now little more than a memory. You tie your horse to a post and walk inside. Dust hangs in the air. A few rugs remain. A torn paiza sits abandoned in a bowl of dried rice. There's no fire, no keeper, but there's a box, carved from cedar, bound in bronze and marked with the same seal as your scroll. You stare. The box has no lock, no trap, no instruction. You unwrap your scroll slowly, hands trembling. You don't open it. You don't need to. You simply place it inside, like a key returning to a door it never knew it had opened. And then one by one you place the others beside it. They nest together like sleeping birds. You close the lid and hear a quiet click. It seals itself. You back away uncertain, breath short. Then the wind kicks up, a strong gust that blows dust into your eyes. When you look again, the box is gone. No tracks, no door, just empty floorboards. The falcon shifts sharply in its cage. You turn. A man stands in the doorway, dressed in layered robes, face obscured by a veil, holding a scroll identical to the one you just delivered. You reach for your paiza, unsure. He raises a hand. You delivered them, he says. You may rest now. You blink. What happens next? He pauses. They're red. Then he walks past you, opens the falcon's cage, and lets it fly. It arcs into the sunset, scroll flapping softly against its leg. You watch it disappear. You don't follow. Instead, you sit on the worn floor of a forgotten station, arms wrapped around your knees, and let your breath slow. Not every rider makes it, but tonight you did. You wake the next morning in Mustak Station with the unsettling realization that you don't remember falling asleep. One moment you were watching the falcon disappear into the burnished dusk. The next you were curled under a faded horse blanket with a half-burned candle flickering nearby. And now, nothing. No man, no scrolls, no box. Only you, a yawning silence, and a horse that looks as tired as you feel. You rise slowly, stretch your aching legs, and step outside. The desert is cooler today, its colors softened by a passing layer of clouds. A gentle breeze kicks up the scent of sand and old wood. It takes a moment before you notice. Your paiza is gone. You search your pockets, your belt, the saddle, nothing. You've been relieved. And yet, something inside you feels oddly calm, as if the mission, whatever it truly was, has ended. You mount your horse and begin riding back east, not fast, not with purpose, just moving. The kind of motion you carry in your bones when you've done the impossible and are too tired to brag about it. After about 3 hours of travel, you see another courier approaching. He's young, tense, bouncing slightly in the saddle. His cloak is too new, his saddle too polished. He holds his paiza high like a shield. You both slow your horses. He squints at you. You a rider? Not anymore, you say. He frowns. Where's your pass? Gone. His eyebrows lift. You finish a route? Something like that. He looks past you, as if trying to spot what mission could possibly lie in the direction you're coming from. but Mustak Station doesn't show itself to the green ones, only to those who've earned it. I heard about that place, he says slowly. They say if you deliver there, you disappear. You smile faintly, almost. He rides on, glancing back once. You don't. Instead, you keep following the trail eastward until you reach Tumen's Spine, a ridge known among couriers for its panoramic view and its tendency to remind riders how far they've come. You dismount, walk to the edge, and look. The steppe stretches before you like a memory unrolling itself. Valleys where you changed horses, huts where you warmed your hands, rivers you crossed, dunes that nearly swallowed you, and somewhere far off, still there maybe, your first scroll, tucked under your arm, smelling faintly of cheese and adventure. And then you hear it, a voice, not loud, not near, just a phrase carried on the wind. Courier, you spin. No one, but the air feels full. Riders whisper of the 1,000 voices, the idea that every scroll ever carried still echoes somewhere on the wind. The important ones, the unfinished ones, the ones that never arrived. Each word sent by the yam is believed, by some, to live on, bouncing between stars and mountain passes. You used to think that was poetic nonsense. Now? Maybe not. You descend from the ridge and reach an old supply stop, one of the primitive types built before the yam became formalized. There's no one there, just a pot of tea, somehow still warm, and a mat unrolled beside the fire pit. You sit, pour yourself a cup, and find a note tucked under the pot. It reads, "Do not carry what no longer needs to move." There's no signature, but the handwriting looks familiar. You sip your tea and let that sit with you. Later, just before nightfall, you pass a caravan of scholars headed east from Samarkand. One of them hails you. "You're a rider?" "I was." He smiles. "Ever lose a scroll?" You think of the 6, of the box, of the man, of the falcon. "No." "Ever read one?" You hesitate. "No." He nods slowly. "Then you were a good one?" He waves you on. You find an abandoned outpost to camp in. The firewood is dry. There's a saddle blanket already laid out, and under it, in the dust, someone has scratched a single word. Listen. That night you do, to the wind, to the silence, to the low rustle of a memory that doesn't quite leave. You sleep with nothing left to deliver, and for the first time in days, your dreams are your own. Your journey takes on a new shape now. Not a mission, not a route, but a quiet unraveling. Each mile back east feels softer, less urgent. You ride slower. You notice things you didn't before. The way certain shrubs grow in clusters that resemble old script. How hawks trace loops in the sky like they're signing their names. How the wind changes tone when it moves through cracked stone. No one's expecting you anymore. You stop at a station called Blue Cusp, a place built on a gentle slope where the sky always seems a bit wider. You remember passing through it on your way west. It was loud then, full of couriers, one complaining about saddle sores, another asleep mid-sentence. Now it's quiet, just a boy outside stirring a pot with a stick longer than he is tall. He looks up as you dismount. "Delivery?" "No," you say, "just passing." He shrugs. "We still got soup." It's the worst soup you've ever had, salty water with what might be a turnip floating in shame. But you eat all of it because that's what riders do. Inside, the walls are covered in charcoal drawings, horses mostly, but also spirals, eyes, and a beautifully etched map that shows trails not even on your official yam route. "They're old," the boy says, watching you stare, "from riders who didn't come back." You trace a line with your finger. "Do you add new ones?" He shrugs. "Sometimes." You sleep on a mat beside the fire, the coals pulsing like heartbeat. At some point, someone covers you with a second blanket. You don't open your eyes. You just whisper thank you to the dark. The next day, you reach a ruined outpost known only as the Forked Rock. It's not on any official map, but you know it by reputation. It once divided two of the great Yam branches, one to the Black Sea, the other to the Persian Plateau. Now it's just a pile of stone, but it's famous because of a story. Centuries ago, two riders arrived here at the exact same moment, both carrying scrolls for the same destination, both insisting they were told to take the lead. They argued, then fought, then supposedly tore their own scrolls in half, stitched them together, and delivered that. The recipient read the mangled message, declared it poetry, and appointed both couriers to his court. Historians still debate whether this actually happened. Some believe it was a fable passed around by writers to justify arguments. Others think it points to a time when the yam was more art than system, when messages meant different things depending on who carried them. You sit on the remains of the forked rock and eat dried figs. You think about the stitched scroll, about the box, about the fact that you still haven't told anyone what happened. And maybe you never will. You pass 3 more stations that day, one empty, one staffed by a girl who speaks only through hand signs, one where the keeper insists on bathing your horse in rose water for morale. You let him. The horse looks stunned, then smug. You hear things now and then as you ride. Snippets of conversation, a voice that calls your name once, softly. You check behind you, but the desert is empty. You begin to wonder if scrolls really do leave echoes, if the letters carried by riders imprint themselves on the world, floating through time like forgotten prayers. One night you camp near a stream. You find an old message tube stuck in the mud, half rotted. Inside, a scroll in perfect condition, dry, sealed, with a broken paiza tied to it. You do not open it. You wrap it in cloth and carry it with you. You ride slower now, not out of fatigue but reverence. You start noticing the others, riders going the opposite way. You see more of them now, some young and pale-eyed, some old with fingers stained by ink and sun. None of them speak unless you do first. You try it once. Ask a rider with a red sash where he's headed. He replies, "Where the letter wants to go," and rides on. You realize something that day. The yam wasn't just a system. It was a pulse, a heartbeat stretched across continents. The riders weren't just messengers. They were blood cells. And the scrolls? They were memory, living, moving memory. That night, you make camp in a hollow surrounded by dry trees. The wind is soft. Your horse sleeps standing. You build a small fire, not for warmth but companionship. And for the first time since Muztagh Station, you reach for the scroll you found in the mud. You hold it over the flames, not to burn it, just to let the firelight touch it. And for a moment, just a flicker, the wax seal seems to shimmer. You pull it back, place it in your pack, and sleep like the earth is finally letting go. The days blur after that. You ride, you eat, you sleep beneath crooked stars. The scroll you found in the mud stays wrapped and quiet in your pack, like a small animal that's not sure whether it's been adopted or arrested. Your horse grows more familiar. You start calling him Smoke, not because he's fast, but because he drifts, gracefully, stubbornly, through every terrain, every mood. He seems to understand your silences. On colder nights, he huffs hot air onto your hands before you mount. You've stopped questioning that. You stop at a small relay hut known as Cinder Point, infamous for its odd habit of burning down and being rebuilt. According to riders' gossip, it's been torched at least 3 times. Once by bandits, once by a lightning strike, and once, inexplicably, by a goat. The keeper here is a woman with one eye and a laugh like flint on stone. She feeds you chickpea stew and asks no questions. But before you leave, she presses something into your hand. A strip of parchment. Blank. It's for you, she says. What does it say? Whatever you need it to. You ride with it in your sleeve, unsure whether to be amused or alarmed. Midway through the next day, a sandstorm hits. There's no warning. 1 minute, the sky is blue. The next, it's a wall of beige and wind, as if the earth itself is trying to erase you. You throw your scarf over your face, crouch low over Smoke's neck, and pray to whatever deity Mongol couriers favored, probably one that liked chaos and sore thighs. Visibility drops to a few feet. You guide Smoke by instinct, by feel, by faith. At one point you pass what might be another rider, hunched under a broken cart, shielding a scroll case with his back. You shout, but your words vanish into the wind. He doesn't move, or maybe he was never there. You find shelter in a dry ravine, shielded by a curve of stone. You and Smoke huddle together, shivering and coated in dust. The scrolls in your pack remain dry, as if the storm respects them more than it respects you. When the storm clears, everything looks wrong. The trail has shifted. Familiar landmarks are gone. You're off course, but not lost. Because you realize something. You don't need the old route. You're not delivering anymore. You're listening, watching, witnessing the yam not as a rider, but as someone beginning to understand what it all meant. You come upon a caravan 2 days later, traders from the west carrying lapis lazuli, dried fish, and rumors. One tells you the great Khan is dead. Another says he's alive but dreaming in a cave, waiting for a scroll to wake him. You nod politely. You've heard stranger things. They offer you rice balls and honeyed tea. You trade them a story about the falcon. One of the traders weeps. Later, an old woman from the group approaches you quietly. She places her hand on your chest, just over where your scrolls rest. You're carrying a message, she whispers. I was. No, she says, still are, and walks away. You don't sleep that night. Not from fear, from weight. Because now you're wondering if maybe that muddy scroll wasn't abandoned, but waiting. You reach Tov Station 3 days later, a legendary rest point carved into the side of a cliff. Riders speak of it with reverence. No one lives there, yet it's always stocked, always clean, always ready. And sure enough it is. You stable Smoke, who seems reluctant to rest. You climb the narrow stone steps into the shelter. Inside, cushions, tea, a ledger where couriers leave notes for each other. You flip through it. Storm hit hard. Lost my boots. Delivered anyway. 2 scrolls, 1 message, I think. Saw a white horse with no rider, still running. You add a line, still carrying, still listening, will return. You sit by the fire, and finally unwrap the muddy scroll. The seal crumbles in your hand, not from force but time. The parchment inside is dry, smooth, and blank. Completely blank. No ink, no mark. You turn it over, feel it, smell it. Nothing, until the firelight shifts, and the letters reveal themselves, written in something that only reflects at the right angle, like silk catching moonlight. You read, "You are the message." You stare at it for a long time. Then you laugh. Not loudly, not madly, just freely. Because of course you are. Because maybe every rider becomes that. Not the carrier, not the scroll, but the story. You place the parchment back in your pack, wrap it carefully, and lie down beside the fire. Outside, Smoke neighs once, then goes silent. The wind picks up gently, curling through the cliff pass like a ribbon, and in the flicker of flame, you swear you hear something written not in ink, not in words, but in the steady rhythm of hoofbeats and breath and sky. A message still moving, And for once it doesn't need to go anywhere, because it's already here. When you wake the next morning, the air smells like clean stone and cool ash. The fire has gone out. The scroll, still blank to most eyes, rests beside you like an old friend waiting for breakfast. You pack slowly, no hurry anymore. Even smoke seems less twitchy, standing still while you strap your saddle with that unspoken rhythm between old companions. As you descend the cliff steps from Tov Station, you glance back one last time. There's no sign anyone else was ever there. No boot prints, no mess, no ledger entries except yours. The station folds itself back into legend with the same ease it welcomed you. You ride into the hills of Kurlan, known to couriers as the knees of the earth, a stretch of ancient rolling land that feels older than wind. The trail here isn't marked. You just know where to go. It's said the first yam rider set the path here by walking barefoot in a storm, one step per prayer. Whether or not it's true, the hills hum. And you're humming with them. By midday, you stop at a low station nestled between two crests. It's maintained by a father and daughter. The girl is no older than 12 but checks your saddle ties with the expertise of someone born into the yam. Her father brews tea in a blackened pot and asks no questions. You eat boiled barley and fermented vegetables. Smoke is fed and watered. The scroll stays wrapped but somehow warmer today, like it's absorbing the stories you've walked through. "You're going east?" the man finally asks, breaking the quiet. You nod. "Strange time to go back." "Strange time to stop," you answer. He nods once and says nothing more. But before you leave, the daughter hands you a small coin, hole in the center, smoothed by countless fingers. "For the bell," she says. You've heard the tale. A bell said to hang from an ancient arch where all messages eventually pass, whether carried by hand or whispered by memory. No one's sure where it is, or if it exists, but tradition says if you find it and toss a coin through, your scroll, whatever it is, will be heard by the wind itself. You thank her. She doesn't smile, just nods, like you've been weighed and found acceptable. The road ahead twists lower, toward the plains. You see travelers now, small clusters of horsemen, traders, and once a shaman wrapped in copper charms who mutters blessings to each hoofprint he sees. He stops when he passes you. "You're carrying silence," he says, and keeps walking. You camp that night by a shallow lake. The water reflects the stars in such perfect clarity that you feel like you're floating between two skies. You boil tea in a dented pot, feed Smoke a stale apple, and stare at the blank scroll. You don't reread the hidden message. You don't need to. Instead, you remember. Not just the route, but the faces. The one-eyed woman who gave you blank parchment, the man by the cage, the red-cloaked stranger on the ridge, the boy who smelled the scroll to know it was true, the burned station, the vanished ledger, and the 6 scrolls that never spoke again once placed in the box. You wonder how many other couriers are out there right now, feeling the weight of something too big for paper, something the yam has carried without knowing. Historians still argue whether the yam was a tool of tyranny or a miracle of movement, whether it brought people together or watched them fall apart more efficiently. But sitting here by the lake, warm cup in hand, horse quietly snoring behind you, you realize something simpler. It listened. The yam listened to gossip, to threats, to jokes, to grief, to love. It heard 1,000 languages and carried them all without complaint. You sleep that night with the scroll under your head, and you dream, not of horses or maps or scrolls, but of laughter echoing down endless trails. The kind of laughter that knows the message was heard. The next day, the sky turns cloudy. Rain's coming. You ride faster, guided not by signs but instinct. You know this part of the land. You rode it once when you were new. It feels different now, smaller but more meaningful. You pass a ruined outpost overgrown with vines. Something about it makes you stop. Inside, half buried under the floorboards, you find a bell. It's not tall or ornate, just a rusted bronze ring hanging from a rotting beam. You reach into your pouch and pull out the coin the girl gave you. You hold it for a moment, then toss it. It arcs cleanly through the bell's mouth and clinks once, sharp and hollow. Then silence. Not a mystical echo, not a rush of wind. Just peace. You ride on. That evening, you reach a yam post near the old trade routes of Dadu, once the grand center of the empire's eastern stretch. The station here is bustling, full of riders, merchants, clerks, and gossip. You blend in easily. One clerk eyes your worn cloak and asks, "Courier?" You smile. "I was." He nods. "Where from?" You shrug. "Everywhere." He seems satisfied by that. In the stable, Smoke finds a place beside 2 war horses and a shaggy mule. You pat his neck, whisper thanks. He huffs like he's heard it all before. Inside the main station, a fire roars. A group of younger riders is swapping stories, some funny, some clearly lies, all told with the confidence of those who think the road is linear. You sit quietly. Eventually one of them turns to you. "What was your longest ride?" You pause, then say, "I'm still on it." No one laughs. One rider nods solemnly like he understands. Maybe he does. You sip your tea and hold the scroll in your lap, not hidden anymore. And no one asks to read it, because they know. Some messages aren't for delivery, some are for remembering, and some are simply meant to be carried until they become part of who you are. You wake to the sound of boots on packed earth, the murmurs of couriers preparing for the day. Horses shuffle, bridles clink, and someone's boiling what smells like millet porridge mixed with pine smoke and too much salt. For a moment, you lie still, eyes open, just listening. This station, large, crowded, efficient, feels almost like a city after the silence of the road. You're not used to this many voices, not anymore. You sit up, stretch, and realize something is different. The scroll, the one you've carried since the storm. It's warm, not hot, not magical, just warm, as if it's responding to the hum of bodies, of stories, of movement all around you. You wrap it back in cloth and tuck it away, not hidden, just held. Today you don't ride, you walk. You leave Smoke in the stables with a nod to the stable boy and begin to wander the edges of the station, weaving through messengers, traders, diplomats, even a few monks transcribing the day's letters onto thin silk. You find a small building labeled simply Archives. Inside, scrolls, hundreds, maybe thousands, some stacked neatly, others shoved onto wooden shelves like overgrown roots. A woman sits at a central table, dipping a brush into ink with the kind of focus usually reserved for surgery or lies. She doesn't look up when you enter. You approach quietly. She finally glances at you. "You lost something?" "No," you say, "I found something." She sets her brush down. "Let me guess. A scroll that doesn't open?" You blink. "How did you—" She chuckles. "They pass through sometimes, every few years. One of you shows up looking like you've ridden through every war and wedding in the empire and hands me something strange. You pull it from your coat. The scroll is still blank until the light shifts and the letters flicker like whispered breath." She peers at it. Her expression changes. "You're not the first to carry it," she says softly, "but maybe you're the last." She gestures for you to sit. You do. "You ever wonder," she begins, "why we started writing things down?" You shrug. "So we wouldn't forget." She shakes her head. "So we wouldn't carry everything. but then the scrolls became heavier than memory. You smile faintly. Feels about right? She leans back. We call these the echo scrolls, not because they speak, but because they return. Always blank, always warm, always right when they're needed. Needed for what? She looks at you with something like kindness. For nothing. And you understand. You don't need to deliver it. You don't need to read it aloud. You don't need to leave it behind. You just need to carry it. And when you're done, it will know. That evening, you sit by the outer fence of the station where old riders gather to mend saddles, sharpen knives, and pretend they're retired. One, a man with a braid down to his belt and tattoos in ancient script, hands you a bowl of stew without asking your name. You look like you've seen the road, he says. You nod. I used to carry the Ember Scroll, he adds casually. Got it during a festival. It sang when it rained. You raise an eyebrow. He shrugs. Maybe it was just wet. Either way I delivered it didn't matter where. Just mattered that it moved. You eat in silence and realize every one of them has carried something strange. A letter that glowed, a package that wept, a map that disappeared when unfolded. None of them knew why. All of them kept writing, because that's what Yam couriers did, not just to serve the empire, but to serve the story. Later that night, you write something on the blank parchment the one-eyed woman gave you. Not a message, not a confession, just a few words. I was here, I wrote, I listened. You don't sign it. You leave it under your blanket and return to the stable. Smoke lifts his head as you approach, ears flicking. You brush his mane, check the saddle. He paws the ground. You want to keep going? You whisper. He doesn't answer. He doesn't have to. You mount. You ride out in the quiet. No direction, no mission. Just movement. The stars blink above, faint but watchful. The scroll presses softly against your chest, and the road unspools like a story still being written, one hoofbeat at a time. The first few hours after you leave the station feel like slipping back into an old song, one you'd nearly forgotten, but your body still knows every word. The saddle creaks just the way it always has. The wind pulls at your cloak with its usual quiet curiosity, and Smoke trots as if no time passed at all, as if he too had just been waiting for the silence to return. You don't take the main roads, not anymore. You follow the lesser trails, the old yam branches that split off from empire routes and wandered toward forgotten villages, pastures, and ruins where messages were once delivered. And now only echoes remain. At one point, you come upon a stone milestone. It's cracked, half buried in moss, and stamped with the faded symbol of Genghis Khan's reign. You dismount and touch the stone, not for guidance, but to honor the weight of footsteps that passed here before yours. Beneath the moss, someone has etched 4 words. I heard, I carried. You sit beside it for a while, the scroll still wrapped beneath your coat. You're not sure where you're headed now, but the road keeps offering you places, so you keep answering. That evening, you find a burned-out post, charred beams, a single corner still standing, blackened scroll cases scattered like bones. It's been years, maybe decades. You tie Smoke to a low branch and begin clearing the ash with your hands. Beneath it all, you find a bell. Small bronze, undamaged. You hang it from what remains of the door frame. It doesn't ring, not right away. You sit by your fire eating dried beans and stale bread, and then, just as your eyes begin to drift closed, chime. Soft, singular, certain. The bell speaks once, then falls silent again. You don't smile, you don't speak. You just close your eyes and rest. The next morning, the scroll is humming again. Not loudly, not literally, but with that same warmth you've come to know. It's as if each place you stop adds another thread to its story. And now, that story has weight. You ride toward the mountains. The foothills rise slowly, clothed in grass and early mist. Smoke climbs steadily, his hooves sure-footed even when the trail disappears into forest. Riders once said this path, the spine of the deer, was for messages meant only for the wind. No cities, no stations, just the earth itself, listening. At a ridge near the peak, you find an ancient cairn, a pile of rocks carefully balanced, with a hollow at its center. Inside it, a leather pouch. Inside the pouch, a letter, brittle with age. You open it slowly, just one sentence in flawless brush script. If no one reads this, it still mattered. You replace it exactly as you found it. Add one smooth stone to the cairn and ride on. There are fewer signs of life here. A broken cartwheel, a bent arrow lodged in a tree, a sandal. The yam used to pass through here, but the system changed, bent south, chased the cities. You're riding what remains of memory. You pass a pair of stone lions, half buried, moss crowned, carved long before the yam even existed. You feel them watching, not judging, just remembering. That night you camp in the shadow of a glacier, beside a trickling stream so cold it numbs your teeth. The fire takes effort, the wood is damp, but you get it going, you warm your hands. And you write, not much, just a single sentence on your blank parchment. The silence still listens. You roll it gently, seal it with a drop of wax, and place it in your pack beside the echo scroll. It feels balanced now, like both scrolls are carrying each other. And you're just the space in between. In the morning, you find a herd of wild ponies grazing nearby. One comes close enough to sniff your saddlebag, then walks away. You take it as a blessing. You continue through the high pass. It's cold now. Snow crusts the edges of the trail. Your breath comes in puffs. But the world is so still, so vast. You feel like a letter traveling through the lungs of the earth. By midday, the mountains begin to descend. You see the plains again, far off in the haze, green, gold, and dotted with clouds like slow thoughts drifting west. You stop at a small outcrop, the last rise before the slope begins. Someone long ago carved a circle into the rock, filled with names. No titles, no dates, just names. You don't add yours, but you read every one and whisper them aloud, because you've learned something on this ride. Messages are not just things we send, they're things we become. The descent from the mountain pass is quiet, but not empty. Each turn in the path reveals new textures, tufts of wind-bent grass, trickling brooks you barely hear until you're beside them, and the thin whistle of the air moving through rock hollows like a reed flute. It's the kind of silence that isn't silence at all, but the patient murmur of a world that has outlasted every message ever carried. You ride slowly. Smoke seems to understand. He picks his way down the slope carefully, pausing often to test the ground. You trust him entirely now. The kind of trust you can't rush. The kind that builds through dust, cold nights, and 1,000 shared moments where neither of you had the strength to keep going, but did anyway. At the base of the trail, you find something unexpected. A standing stone with a bronze bowl perched neatly at its base. A single line is etched into its side, for the message that never found a mouth. You drop a pebble into the bowl. The sound it makes, soft, flat, final, is somehow perfect. By late morning, you reach a long, dry stretch of land once used for ceremonial rides. It's called the Line of Breath, named for how it seems to inhale and exhale wind on a schedule only the land understands. Riders used to race here to train, to prove, but now no one watches, only the ghosts of gallops and the occasional owl watching from a stump. You break into a gallop anyway, not to show off, not to race anyone, just because it feels good to move fast again, to let your lungs expand. to feel the scroll pressed tight against your chest, like it's holding on too. At the far end of the line, you stop at a crooked hut known as Halfway Rest, though no one agrees what it's halfway to. A tiny stone courtyard surrounds it, where travelers have carved proverbs, prayers, insults, and sometimes recipes into the soft rock. You find one near the entrance. Even the wind needs to be reminded where it came from. Inside, a pot of barley tea still simmers, though there's no sign of who made it. You pour a cup, take a seat, and find yourself breathing slower than you have in weeks. The scrolls in your pouch are still. For the first time, they feel complete. Not empty, not waiting, just present. After your tea, you wander behind the hut and find a curious scene. Dozens of small paper cranes, weathered and brittle, tied to a line of twine that runs from one fence post to another. Each has a message written on its wings. Some are faded, others still sharp. Forgive me. Come home. It wasn't your fault. We made it. I remember the peaches. You add nothing, but you stand among them a long time. By dusk, you arrive at a place few writers still visit, the bone shelter. It's not as grim as it sounds, just a circle of ancient posts, some carved from antler, some from driftwood, some said to be from trees that no longer exist. It was once a gathering place. Now it's a place of return. Writers who've carried something too long, grief, secrets, guilt, a scroll they can't explain, sometimes leave something here, not to be read, not to be judged, just to be left. You dismount slowly, smoke drinks from the trough without being asked. You take the scroll, the blank one, the one you wrote on by the lake, and place it gently at the base of a twisted cedar post. No ceremony, no announcement, just a quiet goodbye. You don't look back. You ride out with one scroll left, the one that never asked anything of you except to carry it. You follow the path east now, through fields of thistle and brittle wheat, past the crumbled ruins of what used to be yam mile markers. You see birds again, sparrows, crows, one massive hawk that circles you twice, then vanishes toward the horizon. You camp that night under a ruined archway. There's an inscription on the stone above you. Speak softly so the past can hear you. You eat dried lamb and lentils. You share a few with Smoke. He doesn't thank you. He's above that now. Before you sleep, you unwrap the final scroll. It's smooth from your fingers, worn but unbroken. You hold it in the firelight. You expect it to speak again, to shine, to warm. It doesn't. It just is. And somehow that's enough. You sleep dreamlessly, not from exhaustion, from peace. The morning mist wraps around you like a second cloak. You rise slowly, shoulders stiff but steady, the kind of ache that no longer feels like pain but part of the rhythm of riding. Smoke waits patiently, already awake, snorting softly at the taste of dew on old grass. You mount without a word. No need for ceremony now. The trail east bends toward an area known in Yam folklore as the Listening Plain, a stretch of flatland so eerily quiet that riders once whispered stories into the wind, just to hear their own voices again. Some swore the plain whispered back. Most chalked it up to wind in the grass. Still, every courier you've met agreed on one thing: you never shout here. You enter the plain just before sunrise. The sky is lavender again, the air damp and motionless. Each hoofbeat lands with a muted thud. Smoke's ears flick at sounds you can't hear. You feel the scroll tucked close to your chest, light but present. You think of all the messages that may have been carried over this plain, declarations of war, wedding invitations, royal demands, apologies, lists of taxes, old jokes. You wonder which ones made it, which ones were lost, and which ones still drift beneath your horse's hooves, waiting to be picked up again by someone who will never know their origin. In the middle of the plain, you spot a marker, a tall post made of two intersecting pieces of driftwood lashed together with twine. Around its base are hundreds of small offerings, buttons, copper coins, bits of broken paisas, scraps of silk. You dismount. You leave nothing, and yet something in you loosens. You ride on. By midday, you reach a tiny station barely marked on any map, Moon's Shelter, named after a courier who once survived here for 9 days during a siege, eating nothing but tree bark and regret. Now, it's maintained by a quiet man with a limp and a soft spot for horses. He takes one look at you and says, "You're close." You raise an eyebrow. "To what?" He shrugs. "To being done." You offer him tea. He accepts. You sit beneath the small overhang and listen to the wind twist through the wooden beams. He asks you no questions. You offer no stories. And still, the space between you is full. Before you leave, he says one last thing. "When you reach the willow, let the scroll rest." You nod, not asking which willow. You suspect you'll know. You travel east another 2 days. The land becomes softer, greener, more birds appear, songbirds mostly. Their calls are bright, careless, almost rude after so much silence. You welcome them. You stop in a field of long grass, let smoke graze freely, and take the scroll from your pouch. You don't open it, just hold it. Feel its warmth. A shepherd nearby waves at you. You wave back. He calls out, "You a courier?" "Something like that," you reply. He squints. "Carrying anything important?" You smile. "Everything and nothing." He laughs. "Aren't we all?" You camp that night under a sky so clear you feel like the stars are riding with you. You don't light a fire. You don't need the warmth. The next morning you see it. A single willow tree standing at the edge of a quiet stream. No other trees nearby. Its leaves shimmer like coin silver in the wind. You dismount slowly. Walk to the base. Sit. And for a long time you say nothing. Then gently, you remove the scroll. You set it down in the grass. The stream burbles nearby. You close your eyes and listen. You hear nothing at first. Then wind, leaves, a sigh. You open your eyes. The scroll is gone. Not blown away. Not taken. Just gone. Smoke nuzzles your arm. You pet his muzzle. You both stand there a while, unsure what comes next. But in your chest, where the scroll used to rest, you feel something else now. Not absence. Not loss. Just lightness. And that's enough. You mount once more. And ride. Not to deliver. Not to return. But simply because the road is still open. And you're not done hearing it speak. The land flattens out again. Opening like a book you've already read but still want to finish. Smoke moves at a steady pace, head low, content. He's not rushing. Neither are you. You no longer look at distance the same way. Miles don't mean what they used to. Not after you've ridden across empires, carried messages that changed people who would never know your name, delivered silence more powerful than words. You pass through a patch of poplars, tall and thin, and clicking softly in the breeze. Their leaves fall in slow spirals, brushing your cloak, whispering old secrets no one recorded. Midway through the grove, you come across an old friend. Not a person. A bench. Stone, moss-covered, slightly cracked. But you remember it. You sat here once, years ago, before your first long ride. You were younger, less sure. Your scroll back then was wrapped too tight. You were afraid of dropping it, afraid of failing the message. Now you sit again, different, and the bench feels it. There's a mark carved into the back. Every courier delivers themselves. You don't remember carving it, but maybe you did. Maybe all of you did. You rest a while. share an apple with Smoke, drink the last of your river water, then rise. The road calls again. You pass through a village just past dusk. Small, quiet. No one rushes here. A boy waves at you from the porch of a blacksmith's hut. His mother eyes you curiously. You a messenger, she asks. You think about that. Yes, you say finally, but not the kind you expect. She nods like that makes perfect sense. You sleep in their hayloft, surrounded by the smell of dry grass and warm dust. You leave a coin beside the water bucket when you go, though they asked for nothing. A few hours later, you arrive at the Mouth of Ashes, a name given to a low, quiet valley where an ancient city once stood before it burned. Nothing remains now but uneven stones and the outline of streets. But it's not forgotten. Every courier who's ever passed here leaves something small. A token, a word, a piece of string, even if they're not carrying a scroll, especially if they're not. You dismount. From your saddlebag you remove a strip of parchment, the one-eyed woman gave you, the one you've carried without writing since Tov Station. You write a final line. The road carries what we cannot. Then you tuck it under a stone, where grass grows in the shape of an old doorstep. You don't say goodbye, you just ride on. By now, the road is less a place and more a rhythm. Each turn, each shadow, each patch of dry earth under Smoke's hooves is a note in a song you've been humming in your sleep. You no longer need signs. You recognize the world by feel. At a fork between two hills, you pause and choose the path without even thinking. You know it will lead you where you're meant to go, even if where that is no longer matters. You spend the night at Windhole Crag, a natural cave that echoes like a whisper chamber. You build a small fire and eat what's left of your salted fish. Smoke finds dried grass along the ledge and stands guard like he was born for it. Inside the cave, someone's etched lines into the walls. Messages from writers past. She waited. He never knew I rode this far. It was only ever one letter. You find a patch of bare stone and etch your own. It was worth every mile. In the morning, mist coils down from the hills. You ride through it. You pass an old woman selling herbs from a cart. She squints at you. You smell like dust and decisions, she says. You tip your head in thanks. She hands you a sprig of mint without asking. You place it in your collar. By noon you reach a shallow river and decide to cross barefoot. The water is cold, shocking, real. It bites your toes and clears your thoughts. Smoke drinks from the far bank while you dry your boots in the sun. You're not thinking about where you're going. You're just letting the ground take you there. And now every tree feels familiar. Every crow is a messenger. Every gust of wind carries a name you didn't know you'd forgotten. The scroll is gone, but it left something behind. A stillness, a shape, a message you'll never stop carrying, even if it has no words. Even if it only ever lived in the space between your ribs. You wake on the edge of a meadow where the fog is so thick you can't see 10 feet ahead, but you're not afraid. By now, you trust the path even when you can't see it, especially then. You and Smoke move slowly through the mist. He steps with care, ears twitching. You've learned to follow his lead. He's led you through riverbeds, across salt flats, even through the breath of a sandstorm. If he trusts the trail, so do you. You pass a series of low stone arches, half collapsed and worn smooth by time. Riders once called them the Throat of Stone, a place believed to echo the true name of any rider who passed beneath them. You dismount and lead Smoke by the reins. Together, you walk under the largest arch, carved with the phrase you can barely read. Who delivers the wind delivers themselves. There's no echo, just silence, and somehow that feels right. The mist begins to lift by mid-morning, and what lies ahead makes you stop in your tracks. A field, wide, open, carpeted with wildflowers. Not dramatic, not breathtaking, just gentle. This is the Soft Road, a place rarely mentioned in yam records but spoken of in stories passed between riders. They say if you reach it, you're close to ending something. Not because it's a finish line, but because it's the kind of place that doesn't require you to keep moving unless you want to. You dismount and walk. Not because you have to, but because it feels honest. The flowers part gently underfoot and you swear they lean in to listen. You think of everything you've carried, not just the scrolls, but the stories behind them. The fear, the hope, the sheer stubborn endurance it took to keep riding even when you didn't understand why. And suddenly you feel it, a deep stillness inside you, like the message has settled, like it no longer needs to be held with both hands. At the far end of the field, you find a structure, small, round, made of wood and stone. Smoke stops a few steps behind you, as if he knows this moment belongs to you alone. Inside the structure is a single low table. On it, a blank scroll. No seal, no cord, just parchment. There's also a brush, a shallow bowl of ink, and no one else. You sit. You pick up the brush. You don't think. You don't plan. You just write. You don't know how long it takes. Time doesn't hold shape here. But when you finish, you don't roll the scroll. You don't seal it. You leave it on the table and walk out. You mount Smoke again, and together you move past the structure, through a grove of silver-barked trees, and down a winding slope toward a valley ringed with soft hills. There's a station at the bottom, neat, modest, wooden. You recognize it. It's the first station you ever left from, but it's not the same. Or maybe you're not. You dismount, hand Smoke's reins to a young courier who barely looks 16. He stares at your cloak, your saddle, the way you move like the road is still in your bones. You returning? He asks. You smile. No, just passing through. He nods slowly, like that makes sense in a way his training didn't prepare him for. Inside the station, nothing has changed. Same woven mats, same smell of ink and broth. A clerk behind the counter glances up. You look like you came a long way. I did. He offers you tea. You accept. You sit quietly, watching a new rider struggle to roll her first scroll. Her fingers fumble, her face flushes. You almost rise to help, but stop. She'll learn. We all did. That night, you sleep in the corner of the station where no one bothers you. And for the first time since the desert, you dream. Not of roads, not of riders, but of ink dripping on paper and becoming light. You wake before dawn, pack your things, and leave without sound. Outside, Smoke is waiting. Of course he is. You ride out not toward a destination, but toward whatever comes next. The wind picks up behind you, soft and full, and in it you hear something, not a voice, but meaning, the kind that doesn't need translation, the kind that tells you, you did what you were meant to do, and now, you just ride. You're not counting days anymore. Time has taken on a different shape, rounder, softer, like a circle drawn in the dirt and erased by wind. Each sunrise simply means there's more road. Each sunset, a pause in the rhythm. You no longer ask where you're going. You just ask if the trail still opens in front of you. And it does. This morning, the trail takes you through hills of gold grass, swaying as if they've been waiting for you. Birds call overhead, nothing exotic, just sparrows and the odd crow. But they sound like punctuation marks in a long, unfolding sentence. You pass a shrine built of piled bones, animal mostly, Riders once believed the yam gods lived in the bones of the steppe, that every hoofbeat woke them, that messages whispered between ribs held more truth than anything shouted. You don't leave anything behind. You don't take anything with you. You just nod once. The shrine nods back. By late morning, you see something in the distance, small, dark, fluttering. As you approach, you realize it's a flag, not a royal standard, not a banner of conquest, just a black piece of cloth tied to a willow branch. Underneath it, a stone box. You dismount, brush dust from the lid, and find a symbol carved into it, a stylized scroll looped with 3 rings. You know this symbol. It was used in the early days of the Yam, before the empire formalized its roots. It meant message without recipient. Riders used to leave things here, letters with no destination, questions never meant to be answered, names spoken only in dreams. You open the box. It's empty. You hesitate, then remove the smallest item you carry, a coin with a hole in the center, the one given to you by the girl back at the station weeks ago. You've been holding onto it for a reason you could never name. Now you know what it was for. You place it gently inside and close the box. The wind lifts the black flag once like a sigh, and you ride on. That evening, you camp at the edge of a dried lake bed. The ground is cracked like old parchment. In the center of it, far off, you see something white. Against your better judgment, you walk toward it. It's a scroll, crumpled, water-stained, unreadable. You lift it, turn it over in your hands, and feel a deep sadness. Not because of what was lost, but because no one will ever know what it was. You carry it back with you anyway. You don't bury it. You don't burn it. You just keep it near the fire as if it might still speak when it's ready. At midnight, smoke wakes with a start. You rise listening. Silence. Then, hoofbeats in the distance. Steady, soft. You stand, hand on your saddlebag, eyes scanning the darkness. But nothing comes. Just the sound. Then it stops. And all you're left with is the rustling of the dry grass and the faint smell of snow on the wind. You sleep lightly that night. Not afraid, just expectant. The next day you find an old well, dry, cracked. Beside it, someone's carved a line into the stone with a blade or a bone. I sent it, I never knew if it came. You sit on the edge of the well and drop in a pebble. It doesn't echo. Some messages don't need to. That afternoon, you come upon a group of riders, 5 of them, huddled around a fire, passing flatbread and dates. They wave you over without asking who you are. One of them, an older woman with silver hair braided in a loop, asks, "You writing for something?" You think for a long time before answering. "No," you say, "I'm writing from something." She nods slowly. "Aren't we all?" They offer you food. You stay the night. There's laughter, true laughter, the kind that doesn't come from joy but recognition. One writer tells a story about a scroll that changed hands 14 times and was finally delivered to the wrong person, who then fell in love with the message anyway. No one knows what it said, he adds, but they say she framed it. In the morning, they're gone. Smoke looks at you, ears forward. You mount again and ride. The trail today feels old, the kind of old that doesn't just speak history, it carries it in its bones. You pass a tree where someone has hung dozens of tiny bells on thin strings. As you pass beneath it, they chime, not in harmony but in memory. You don't know who hung them, but you thank them all the same. And for the first time in many days, you begin to feel that the ride is bringing you back. Not in a circle, not in reverse, but inward. Like you're not traveling toward a place. You're traveling toward a knowing. The land ahead is dusted in frost now, silver grasses, brittle thistles, and the first bite of real cold in the wind. You pull your cloak tighter, but you don't slow down. Smoke's breath curls in soft clouds with every exhale, but his pace is steady, each hoofbeat writing one more syllable into this long, quiet sentence you've been writing for weeks. You crest a ridge and spot a circle of stones, arranged too neatly to be natural. In the center, a cairn built of scroll cases, some rusted, some still bearing the faint glint of wax seals long broken. You dismount and approach slowly. Writers once called this place the Archive of the Lost, where undelivered messages were left in honor, not shame. Not all scrolls made it. Not all scrolls had to. The Yam knew that. Even the Empire did, once. You kneel beside the cairn and notice a scrap of parchment tucked under a rock. It's weather-worn, edges curled, ink faded but legible. I wrote as far as I could, and that was enough. You don't add your name, but you add a stone, and then you write on. You enter a shallow canyon where the walls rise like waves on either side, ancient red rock layered with centuries of sun and dust. Here, every sound you make feels bigger. Hooves echo, leather creaks, breath folds in on itself. This is the Gorge of Answers, not because it gives you any, but because it feels like it should. Riders used to shout questions into the canyon and wait for the echo. Some said the way the sound returned carried meaning. You try it. You call out, "What was I really carrying?" Your voice bounces back, "Really carrying, ring." You chuckle, of course. No real answers, just you, just the sound of your own voice coming back changed. That night, you find an abandoned orchard. Apple trees mostly, twisted and thin from age but still standing. The fruit is long gone, the leaves dropped, but the branches claw at the sky like they're writing something only the stars can read. You camp beneath them, wrapping yourself in both blankets this time. In the quiet, you think about the messages no one sees, glances between strangers, hands reaching without touching, the letters written and never sent. Maybe those are the ones that really last. You wake early to the sound of hooves. Not yours, not Smoke's. You rise fast, heart quickened, but see no rider. Just hoofprints in the frost. Fresh, single, heading east. You follow without thinking, and by midday, you arrive at a wide field broken only by a solitary post. No sign, no symbol, just a weathered wooden post with a single scroll tied to it. You approach, untie the scroll. It's blank, but it smells faintly of fire and flowers. You smile. This is the Post of Echoes. Another of those whispered places passed down between riders, rarely mapped, often doubted. They say messages left here are read by whoever needs them most, whenever they need them most. You don't write anything, not this time. You leave the scroll tied to the post, not as sender, not as receiver, just witness. The ride continues. You pass a stone wall built by no one you've ever heard of, etched with symbols that don't match any script you know. But somehow, you understand what it means. It says, "You're not alone, even when you ride alone." That night, you make camp by a lake so still it reflects the stars more clearly than the sky itself. You whisper a name into the water, one you haven't spoken in years. It vanishes without a ripple, and somehow you feel lighter. Smoke lies beside you that night, close enough to share warmth. You fall asleep with your hand resting on his shoulder, and for the first time in a long while, you don't dream. You just rest, and when you wake, there's a trail waiting, as there always is, and you ride it, not for glory, not for a scroll, but because writing is the message now, and you are learning to read it. The land begins to widen again, the kind of openness that makes you feel very small and very free at the same time. Smoke moves easily now, each step sure, steady, as though he's learned the rhythm of the earth itself. You're not following a map anymore. You haven't in days. You're following something quieter, something that rises in your chest like a memory, not quite formed but familiar in the bones. By midday, you arrive at a flat expanse called Whisper Field. Nothing grows here except short grass and tiny purple flowers. There's no wind, no birds, only the hush of 1,000 stories left behind. Riders say this is where the yam once ended, not officially, but spiritually. When a courier reached this point, they were allowed to stop. If they had no scroll to deliver, they could lie down in the grass, close their eyes, and listen to the footsteps of those who came before. You dismount, you sit, you do nothing else for nearly an hour, and in that silence you hear it, not sound but sensation, like the echo of hooves in your ribs, like the weight of a sealed message just before it's handed off, like breath before a name is spoken. And then, like a breeze returning to the field, you feel it. You are no longer carrying anything, not physically, not spiritually. What you were meant to hold has been held. What you were meant to carry has been heard. You rise, brush your hands on your cloak, and whisper a thank you to the field, though you don't know who's listening. Smoke nuzzles your shoulder. You ride on. The next path takes you down through a thin ravine filled with chalky stone and sudden shade. It's cooler here, damp. You follow the sound of trickling water and find a tiny spring bubbling up through the cracks in the earth. A stone bench waits nearby. On it sits a small carved box, unfinished, lid open. Inside, a single scroll. You almost laugh, but then you see the seal, and you freeze. It's your seal, the same mark that once adorned the scroll you carried across sand, snow, mountains, silence. But this scroll is new, untouched, as if it was only just written. You lift it. You don't open it, but you know what it says. Somehow you always knew. You sit on the bench and hold the scroll gently in your lap, and then you hear footsteps, soft, measured. You turn, and there at the edge of the spring stands another rider, dressed like you, weathered, quiet, their eyes wide, not in fear but recognition. You rise, say nothing. You hold out the scroll. They take it, they nod, and leave. You never ask their name. They never ask yours, because riders don't need names at moments like this. Only the message and the ride. You stay at the spring one more night. Smoke grazes freely. You cook a bit of rice with pine salt and drink cold spring water. There's no fire, just the moon reflecting off the rocks like 1,000 unseen eyes. In the middle of the night, you wake to hooves, just one pair. You smile in your sleep, because someone else is riding now. You've passed the message on, and it's not yours anymore. The trail feels different now. Not softer, not harder, just changed. As if the road itself is aware you've passed something on. Like it's watching, waiting to see what you'll do now that you're no longer bound by destination or duty. Smoke senses it too. His gait is lighter, more playful. He dances a little on the early frost, flicking his ears back toward you as if asking, "Now what?" You don't answer, because you don't know. And for once, that doesn't feel like a problem. You descend from the highlands into a wide basin cradled by hills. The sun is slow to rise here, reluctant behind a veil of low clouds. A light drizzle begins, a quiet one, soft as breathing. You lift your hood. Smoke shakes his mane. Neither of you hurries. At the center of the basin is a ring of wooden posts, some leaning, some broken, others wrapped in colorful cloths and faded silk. Writers call this place the Circle of Unsent Words. It's where letters that were never written are laid to rest. You dismount and walk among the posts. Some have pouches tied to them, stained from weather but still sealed. Others bear carvings, dates, symbols, a single line like, "I should have told you I stayed for you. I forgave you before you asked. I never stopped hoping you'd write back." You reach into your pouch and pull out the crumpled, weathered scroll you found in the lake bed days ago, the one too soaked to read. You tie it to one of the posts, not to say goodbye, but to say it mattered anyway. As you ride out of the basin, the rain eases. A bit of sunlight slips through and catches the silk on one of the posts, making it flutter like a banner. You don't look back. You don't have to. The road carries you through rolling fields with the smell of sage and mud rising gently in the air. Birds dart low. A fox crosses your path and doesn't run. You come upon a bridge, stone, arched, older than the empire. Moss creeps over the base. In the center of the bridge, carved into the stone rail, is a sentence in Old Mongolian. You read it aloud quietly. If you ride with silence, it will guide you. You pause in the middle of the bridge. Let smoke drink from the river below. Let your hands rest. Let your mind drift. It doesn't go anywhere dark. It just quiets. And in that stillness, you realize something you hadn't before. You're not done riding, but you are done carrying. That part of your journey, the weight, the questions, the desperate need to deliver something without knowing what it means, is over. Now you're just riding with it, not for it. There's a station not far from the bridge. You stop for the night. It's small, almost hidden among trees, staffed by an old man who doesn't ask why you're here or where you're going. He just gestures to a pot of soup and a stack of firewood. You eat in silence, wrapped in the warmth of the fire and the soft scratch of rain against the roof. Before sleep, you open a small drawer beside your cot and find a quill, some parchment, and a jar of faded ink. You write one sentence. "This road no longer asks who I am, it rides with me anyway." You don't sign it. You tuck it into the drawer and sleep soundly. No dreams. No riders passing in the night. Just the low whistle of wind in the chimney and smoke's quiet snoring outside. In the morning, the sun returns. You saddle up, not because you must, but because the road is open, and it's waiting to show you more. Smoke's hooves tap out a steady rhythm as the road bends eastward once more, threading through low hills touched by the first breath of spring. Tiny buds open on gnarled trees. Birds call from high branches, their songs loose and lazy, as if they too are stretching awake after a long sleep. There's no destination in your mind now, only direction. And even that feels flexible, as if the road is less about going somewhere and more about being somewhere, being here. You pass a grove of plum trees just beginning to blossom. Pale petals drift like paper scraps, sticking to your sleeves, your hood, the folds of Smoke's saddlecloth. It's quiet enough to hear them land. They make no sound. And that silence, gentle, expectant, is what brings you to the next stop. A low structure nestled into a hill, overgrown with ivy, and nearly invisible unless you were already looking for it. You recognize the place by feel, not sight. The House of Names. There are no signs, no scroll racks, no busy station hands with pens behind their ears. Just a dark doorway and an open courtyard filled with small stones, each one etched with a name. You dismount. You walk slowly, reading some aloud. Naran, Solongo, Ming, Ashar. No one ever called me by this one. You don't see your name, but that makes sense. You've become harder to name lately. Inside, the room is cool and still, walls covered in smoothed clay. There's a table in the center, and beside it, a block of wood with an iron stylus. You understand what to do without being told. You press the stylus into the clay wall and write a word. Not your name, not your story, just a word that feels like both. Still. Then you return to the courtyard and sit for a long time. Smoke grazes nearby, the petals keep falling. A bird perches on the corner of the rooftop and blinks at you like it's waiting to hear what you'll do next. You don't speak, because this part of the ride doesn't need words. When you finally rise, your joints creak with the slow kindness of age. Not old age, just miles, memory, resting weight. Back in the saddle, the road narrows again, cutting through tall grasses and rock cairns too weathered to trace. You pass a marker stone with an inscription worn almost flat, but you recognize the rhythm of the etching. The yam is not a system, it's a sentence, and you are the breath between the words. You exhale through your nose. Not a laugh, not quite. The sun hangs low when you arrive at a clearing filled with mirrors, hundreds of them, broken and bent, propped against trees and stones. Some are cracked, some are polished. All of them reflect the sky more than they reflect you. This is the place of splinters where riders come to see the pieces of themselves they left behind. You dismount, step carefully. In one mirror, you see yourself from the first days. Cloak too clean, eyes too bright. In another, you see the rider who survived the storm. The one who carried the scrolls without knowing why. The one who slept beside ruins and left nothing behind. And in the last mirror, you see yourself now. Still dusty, still quiet, still here. You don't cry, but your eyes burn just a little. Before you leave, you adjust your cloak. Not because it's necessary, but because the reflection deserves that. You mount Smoke again, and as you ride, you begin to realize something. You are no longer retracing steps. You are no longer on a route. You're on a return. Not to a place, not to a person, but to yourself. The version of you that existed before the scroll, before the ride, before the duty. The one who simply loved the rhythm of hooves and the hush between words. As night falls, you find an old yam hut with a fire already lit inside. No one is there, but a bowl of stew waits on the table. You eat without suspicion. You sleep without fear. You dream of ink drifting from a scroll and becoming stars. And you wake knowing you're almost there. You rise with the early light brushing the inside of the hut like soft fingers. There's steam still rising from the fire. Someone must have tended it while you slept, though you never heard a door, a footstep, or a breath that wasn't your own. You don't question it. Not anymore. Some kindnesses don't need a source. You saddle Smoke in silence. He snorts once as if to say, "About time." You pat his neck and begin riding east again, into the pale dawn, the kind that doesn't announce itself, but quietly settles over the world like dust over parchment. The road here is old, familiar. Your eyes scan the path, not because you're uncertain, but because something in you knows. You've ridden this way before, not in memory perhaps, but in spirit, and now the road is finishing its sentence. You reach the two stones by midday, twin boulders rising out of the flat grassland like the shoulders of a buried giant. Riders say they mark a line that only those who've completed a journey may cross. Not the end of the road, just the beginning of understanding. You dismount and walk between them, your hands brushing the moss-covered stone. There's no sound, no magic chime, no gust of wind. But your heartbeat slows. Your breath deepens, and you feel something inside you loosen that you didn't even realize was clenched. Beyond the stones is a wide plain with nothing on it. No stations, no shrines, no signs, just space. So you ride. Smoke moves with ease as though he's known this route longer than you have. The rhythm is slower, more deliberate. There's no rush, no urgency. You ride until the sun begins to lower, casting long shadows behind you. Then, up ahead, you see a structure, a simple post with a crossbeam. Hanging from it, a single bell. And you know where you are. This is the last sounding. Every rider hears of it. Some say it doesn't exist. Others say you only find it when your message has already arrived. You dismount. You step toward the bell. It's made of copper, weathered to green. A long cord dangles from its center. You take it in your hand and pause. You're not ringing it to signal completion. You're not ringing it for attention. You're ringing it to say, I am here, I have arrived, I listened, I carried, I returned. You pull gently. The sound is soft, not a clang. A hum, low, full, resonant. It rolls out across the plain like a whisper turning into breath. Smoke lowers his head. You stand there a while longer holding the cord, and then you let go. Nothing happens, except that everything does, because now you're ready to stop, to keep going, to rest, to remember. You ride a short distance further and find a circle of standing stones, forming a ring just wide enough for a horse and rider to sleep inside. Someone's left wood and tinder. You light a fire. You unwrap your blanket. You sit with your back against a warm stone, and you remove one last thing from your pouch. Not a scroll, not a coin, not even a piece of parchment. Just a smooth, flat stone with a crack through the middle. You don't remember when you picked it up, but you understand what it is. It's what's left after you carry a message long enough. Not a weight, a reminder. You place it at your side and sleep, and in your dreams the road stretches out again. Not behind you, not ahead, but around you. And you are not lost in it. You are part of it. The sun greets you gently on the last morning, not with heat or blinding light, but with warmth that seeps in like a memory, slow and comforting. Smoke stretches beside you, exhaling through his nose with a sound that feels strangely like a sigh of contentment. You brush your hand along his shoulder. He leans into it. You both know what today is. Not an ending, but a kind of punctuation. The fire has burned down to embers. You leave it that way, still alive, still warm. Not everything needs to be extinguished to be finished. You mount up for what feels like the final time, though of course it never is. You ride now with the looseness of someone who no longer fears the journey, nor clings to its purpose. The wind shifts behind your ears. The road is smooth. Even the saddle creaks a little less. Ahead lies a grove unlike the others. Taller trees, wide paths between them, dappled light on soft earth. This is the grove of final riders, and you can feel it before you see it. The way your breath aligns with the breeze. The way Smoke's ears flick forward like he's remembering something he's never been told. You ride in. The trees rise around you like cathedral walls, and the air smells of pine and damp moss. At the center is a low stone table. Upon it dozens, maybe hundreds of scrolls, some tied neatly with faded silk, others crumbled and open, a few burned to black curls at the edges. No guards, no ritual, just the understanding. If you've made it here, you don't need permission. You dismount. Approach the table. There's a scroll with your seal again, not new this time, old, the same one. It has followed you here. You open it. The parchment is blank, but when you tilt it in the light, faint impressions emerge, words pressed into the fibers like breath on glass. You carried more than words. You delivered more than messages. You became the path. You fold it gently. You do not place it back on the table. You keep it, not as proof, but as reminder. Others will arrive here too, one day, on foot, on horseback, in dreams. They will bring their burdens and leave them on the table. they will sleep among the trees, and they will wake lighter. Smoke nudges your arm. Time to move again, but not far. At the edge of the grove is a clearing where riders have carved their symbols into bark, stone, and bone. You find a smooth patch of wood. You carve a simple line, curved, quiet, unfinished. The ride isn't over. The scroll is still blank, and yet it's already been read. You lead Smoke forward, not riding this time. You walk together as equals, pace for pace, hoof beside boot, toward whatever path lies past the clearing. There is no signpost, no name, just space, just air, just road, and you don't look back. Because the yam lives in motion, not in memory, and you carry it now not in your hands, but in the way you walk, the way you pause, the way you listen. And when night falls again, wherever it finds you, you'll know what to do. Because the message has always been this: you are the rider, you are the scroll, you are the journey. So now let everything slow down. Let your breathing lengthen like the road behind you. Let your chest rise softly, like Smoke's did in the grass. Let your eyelids become heavier, not with exhaustion, but with that full-bodied calm that comes after something sacred has been witnessed. You've been riding for a long time, not just through steppes and rivers and crumbling stations, but through questions, through weight, through silence. You carried scrolls written in languages no one speaks anymore, messages of grief, of hope, of nothing at all. And still, you rode. Through snowstorms that whispered doubt, through sun-bleached plains that tested your patience, and through the still, hard moments where even the echo of your horse's hooves seemed to vanish. And yet you arrived, not because you hurried, not because you had to, but because something in you trusted that every hoofbeat mattered, even when no one was waiting at the next post, even when the scroll was blank, even when the road curled back on itself like a forgotten question. You learn that sometimes carrying something is not about where it goes. It's about what it does to you. The weight shapes the rider. The silence teaches the message. The journey becomes its own kind of arrival. And now you don't have to carry anything. You don't have to remember every post, every name, every fork in the trail. You don't even need to remember which scrolls were real and which were metaphor. You only need to remember the stillness you feel now. Like that warm hut beside the fire, like the moment before the bell sounded, like the hush between sentences when breath is the only language left. So close your eyes, not because the ride is over, but because the ride has become part of you now. The hooves are quieter, the road is darker, and somewhere just ahead, past the last stone, past the final bend, the stars are rising again. Familiar shapes in a sky that always knew your name. Not the one you used at stations. The real one. The one you never had to write down. So sleep now. Let the scroll unroll in your dreams. Let the wind turn its pages. Let the message read itself into the quiet corners of your mind. Because you are safe. You are still. You are home. Good night, rider. You've done more than enough.